Today, Jaene Castrillon counsels children to get off the streets and out of the sex trade. She knows what she's talking about. Castrillon spent 4 years as a prostitute. At first, selling sex meant easy money and independence, but eventually, the mean streets left her feeling used and broken. It took 7 attempts before she finally made it out of the sex trade. Tonight, Jaene Castrillon's great escape on Person to Person. Jaene Castrillon used to walk these streets as a prostitute. Today, she's back on them. She helps sex trade workers connect with social agencies and the police. She helps get them off the street and into a new life. She's a human rights advocate and has traveled the world to speak to prostitutes in Canada, in Nicaragua, and in Europe. Jaene Castrillon was born in Toronto to a Chinese mother and a Colombian father. Her parents' marriage, she says, was troubled. Both were immigrants to Canada who struggled to make it with no family support. Her father drifted in and out of her life. Her mother worked 3 jobs to make ends meet. Castrillon spent much of her time alone. When Castrillon was 8 years old, her parents divorced, and her mother took her to Hong Kong to live with relatives. Castrillon says she just couldn't fit in, half Asian, half Colombian, and plump. To make matters worse, Castrillon says she was sexually abused. Unable to cope, she rebelled, and at age 16 was sent back to Canada alone. Back in Toronto, her life spiraled out of control. She was diagnosed with depression. She was hospitalized against her will and found herself living in group homes. Eventually, she ended up on the street, selling sex to survive. Drugs, violence, and sex with strangers eventually took their toll. Castrillon finally realized she deserved a better life. But most of her attempts to get off the street failed. She tried university. She built a sculpture garden, which helped her on her healing journey. It wasn't until she went on a camping trip up north that she had her first real breakthrough. I spoke with Jaene Castrillon in Toronto at what she calls her first real home. When did you leave Hong Kong?
When I was 16.
And why did you leave?
I've been asking my mom for years. I hated Hong Kong. I always made it well known. And not just hated my environment and most of the people in my family. I hated everything. I hated school. I hated the Chinese way of life. I hated being a freaking girl the way they wanted me to be. I was supposed to take music. I couldn't take art because boys take art. And I was like, well, I don't mind being in a class with 50 boys. And they're like, no, 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 girls take music. And I'm like, but I like art. So it was very frustrating because you couldn't be who you needed to be. Well, at least I couldn't. I think if you were very feminine and girly and you liked that kind of stuff, you would have fit it. But that wasn't me, you know, like, it just wasn't me.
How bad did it get in the house in Hong Kong?
I think I disclosed my abuse from my uncle to this really close friend that was my mom's friend. I don't know. I think he did tell my mom, not probably the whole thing. I wrote him a note in Chinese, which took me days to write. Just to, when it popped in my head, I remembered. I told him, and he had this look on his face. It was so sad. And that's when I think I realized something bad happened, because just he couldn't look me in the eye. And he was so sad. And he was such a fun-loving guy. And then shortly after, my mom pops up and says, you got a ticket next month, so we're going to have to pack. And I was like, okay.
Did you leave alone?
Yeah. 3 suitcases and a rice cooker. Fresh off the boat.
Sounds like the name of a song, doesn't it?
Kind of, yeah.
So everything
cheesy karaoke song.
Was there money? Did they give you some money?
No money on hand, a little bit. Just a little bit of change for first and last month's rent.
So how did you feel coming to Canada at 16 with your rice cooker?
I remember, oh my God, customs was the worst. They went through everything. And my mom has this knack for packing a lot of stuff in a small space. I had no clue how to. They opened, and I didn't know what she packed, so they opened the rice cooker, and there's like pens and erasers and socks and underwears, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like such an immigrant, right? And it took me so long to pack everything. She packed pillows and blankets, and I was just like, yeah, they don't have these in Canada, Mom. You know, like, it was totally weird.
Who were you living with when you were back in Canada?
I lived with a Chinese family, watched Chinese movies. So still a very Asian life. And that didn't work out. I got diagnosed with depression within a few months.
How did that happen? Were you showing symptoms?
I don't know. My family doctor decided I was depressed, I guess. I talked to him, and he was like, you know, you're depressed, you need medication. I was like, what the hell is this depression stuff? You know, Chinese people, mental illness is a matter of snapping out of it. Just snap out of it, right? So you don't really talk about that stuff. So I was like 16, and I'm like, doctors are always right. They're there for your own good. So I was like, okay. But I had a job, and I was going to school. I had a job full time, you know, within the month of landing, and I went to school, and I got my good marks. And
what was your job?
I was a dim sum girl. I was selling dim sum, so pushing the cart, yelling out names, and that kind of stuff.
So how did you wind up at the doctor for...
I went for other stuff, and then he diagnosed me as depressed one day, and then gave me some antidepressants, and then those didn't quite work out, so I had a few. So he referred me to a psychiatrist, and then the psychiatrist really, and this was a Chinese family doctor, Chinese psychiatrist, so I was still very much in the Asian community, and I didn't like the psychiatrist at all. I just didn't think he was listening to me. What
were the signs that you were exhibiting? What were the problems they were telling you?
I was sad.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sad. I was probably having a little bit of challenge adjusting, but I think you have to take that in context. I'm 16, I'm away from my family. I had no family or friends here. You know, everything's new. I'm working, I'm going to school.
So you took the antidepressants, they didn't work, you were still sad, they gave you a few more, and then something bad happened. What was it?
Well, the psychiatrist, and then basically there was some self-abusive behavior.
What does that mean?
Self-mutilation. So
were you cutting yourself?
Yeah.
Pulling your hair out? Cutting.
And so that warranted me getting into the psych ward.
Somebody diagnosed you there as a threat to yourself or to others, which meant they then had the right to keep you.
And the right to make decisions on my behalf, which really peeved me off. Yeah, that really pissed me off because basically I couldn't say no to the pills. And I didn't like the pills, and I didn't want to do the pills, and they made me like a zombie, and I didn't like it. And so there were times the pills like kind of makes you in a different headspace. I was there for 6 weeks. And my mom signed me into the group home thinking that was the best thing, but it wasn't. I was in a group home for 2.5 years, so I lived with like 6 other kids that had their own issues.
Jaene, how did you go from the little girl who was so eager to please and so in awe of authority that you could police yourself as a grade 3 student to somebody who is so angry that if someone even looks at you with a rule, you just want to kick them?
Well, the psych ward did that for me.
But what got you...
Being held down. Being held down. Not being able to fight or flight. Not being able to make my own decisions. Not being able to be heard when I said the pills are not working. The pills are not good for me. The lithium makes me very irritable and makes me want to hurt people, which is not me, not being heard. And being constantly mentally and physically held down. And I just got angry. They just said, oh my God, you have panic attacks, here's some Ativan. Oh, but now you're seeing aliens, here's another pill. Oh, but now your depression's worse, so let's add some more pills. And oh, but you're manic, here's another pill for that. Oh, but this combination's not working, let's swap this around, okay.
So how did you go from that, from group home, to prostitution?
Well, when I moved out of the group home...
Cue police siren.
Yeah. When I moved out of the group home, I was in my own housing. I had a job. I was going to school. The depression got worse, possibly because of the pills. So eventually, I had to give up that job, go on EI. Then I'm on welfare. So I got evicted from a nice apartment. I rented this, quote unquote, my friends called the hole in the ground. 1 bedroom for $450 with a padlock on the door. And when the snow melted, you had to wear your shoes in the apartment because it would go... And people would knock their head on the furnace, and there was like mice and cockroaches, so it was a hole in the ground. So it just didn't help my depression, and so you're really in a dead end. You're like, you can't get a job, you're medicated out of your mind, you got no money, you're broke, you can barely afford soy sauce and rice after rent. I was dating some older guys that would give me money and buy me food and give me tokens, and I just kind of eventually, you know, some friends were like, you know, you can make some money off this, and I was like, off sex, and I was like, it's better than dating some old guy that has control issues. So I was like, okay. So I tried it. So then I went into the trade.
So who arranged the first trick for you?
I did.
What did you do?
There's a phone line that I called. It was like one of those like personals, you know, those lines, you know? So I put in my ad and I used certain code words, and that's how I pulled a few dates.
Code words like?
Generous, older gentleman, open-minded, young female, voluptuous.
It's creepy to a lot of us. Did it pass through your mind?
As creepy?
Yeah.
No. It was a beautiful thing for me. It was. In the beginning, it was a beautiful thing. I didn't have to get to know you. You didn't have to you weren't supposed to get to know the real me. You know, I had a facade, you know, disassociate. Disassociation is very profitable in the sex trade. So plus you had all the drugs. Yeah, so my pathologies were very profitable suddenly. Yeah. Like, there was uses for all the wrong things I had. So, like, having issues with who I am, so becoming a different person, perfect. Disassociating, not connecting to other humans, perfect. Having someone give me money instead of going for welfare, even better. You know, for a sliced up, overweight, you know, low self-esteem girl that really has no marketable or mainstream skills at all, to be able to make $160 to $250 an hour. I mean, whew. You know, somebody's willing to pay $250 to spend an hour with me. So in the beginning, it was kind of like there was that excitement, the fact that I was completely independent, the fact that I could move from this hole in the ground. Mentally, it gave me that leg up to feel empowered, feel stronger. When I was in the psych ward, I didn't stick up for myself as much. I did let people walk all over me to the point that I would suddenly blow up. Whereas in the sex trade, I learned that, no, you got to set your boundaries and you got to enforce it. It's training. And it sounds bad, but like if a client doesn't respect your rules from the beginning, that client's going to turn out to be a bad date. Tried, tested, and true. So selling sexual services empowered you for the first time in your life? Yeah. It's strangely enough, isn't it? So it did in the beginning. But then you realize. What do you realize? You realize after a while it's not all it's cracked up to be. There's a lot of sacrifices you make. You spend most of your day being somebody else. So who are you at the end of the day? You know, you're not even a human being really to them. So you kind of disassociate to the point you focus on something and you don't think about anything else. Because thinking too much while you're in the trade it's detrimental to your mental health. What were your rules? No kissing on the back of my neck. That was a special place. So I'd just be like, oh, I'm ticklish. So were you willing to do anything, any sort of sex? Not anything. I mean, there's safety concerns, obviously. I mean, there's a lot of crazy guys out there meaning to do you harm. But I think in the beginning, I didn't make the choices based on cash. I made the choices, it was a sense of duty, like job, like it was my job. And, you know, doing your job well involves certain things. And as weird as it sounds as in prostitution, I did feel that way, that to be a good prostitute, this or these things. The customer walks away happy, you walk away happy, you know. If you can make it into a long-term thing, great. If not, you're there to help them massage their ego, right? So in the beginning, it was just a thing. So when did it start going badly? When I couldn't get out. So every time I exited and I had to go back, or the times I tried to exit and it didn't work out. In the beginning, I was numb, so I didn't really care. I didn't care what they thought. I didn't care. Whatever. I was just like, whatever. It's a thing. I don't have to be on welfare. I don't have to be scrutinized by a bunch of shrinks. I'm out of the system. Great, you know? So I understood it was always a compromise. So you just do whatever made money. So, and for me, I'm not tall, blonde, skinny with big boobs, and I wasn't that young looking back then. So I had to market things like specialties, which would be like sadomasochism and stuff like that, because that made a lot more money and you had to do a lot less for it. This is like therapy for free. I know, it's kind of for a bit, and then after a while you realize this is not really me. So you got sick of it? Yeah, I got really sick of it. And some of your friends have been killed, haven't they? Well, not close friends, but people I knew in the trade in the last year. One OD'd and the other was killed, and it's still unsolved. So, you said that when you got tired of it and you started to realize that you didn't want to have to do this, that it was difficult to get out. Why was it difficult to get out? Because, you know, I'm kind of like not all there. I'm not really have marketable skills, you know. I got some the same reasons that you got in. Yeah. So I'm stuck, you know. It's like, you know, going to McDonald's for a job is just not my thing. I mean, I tried to have day jobs and I had regular jobs throughout the trade. It's just one thing or another would happen. And it was just became like one job. Apparently a customer outed me and told my manager that I was a prostitute. And my manager confronted me, and suddenly there's crap. People are making little quips at work, and you're like, well, I'm miserable making $8 an hour, So why wouldn't I be miserable making 100 an hour to 200 to 300? Like, I'm miserable anyway. So I did get jobs in between, but it never really materialized.
So what finally happened that broke it for you? Did you have...
Oh, I broke every day. I did. There was a point, it's like every day you go out there, your heart's not in it, and you're broken. And you're just out there and you're trying to break and you just try to make your money and
so did you finally
survive the next day.
Did you have an epiphany? Did you finally have a moment where you went...
Not in the trade, while in the trade.
Right.
I always knew I wanted out.
So how did you get out?
Slowly, trial and error, lots of trial and error, and having experiences in my life that were very positive that helped me know that what I wanted was different.
Like what?
98, one of the agencies I was affiliated with, SOS, they had a camping trip. There was an epiphany there.
What happened?
Well, I got really beat up by the ex-boyfriend. Like, I was really quite bruised and I could barely open one side of my mouth, and it was a horrible situation. So it was a free camping trip away from the trade for 5 days, not having to worry about money, rent, living in gungy hotels, stupid boyfriends, you know, just to let it all go and not be there at all. And it was beautiful. It was great, you know, eating granola with fresh picked blueberry s'mores, campfire, you know, hiking, portaging, like good pain, like, you know, like physical, like, I feel good today, you know, I challenge myself, that kind of thing. And I remember saying throughout the whole camping trip, I want to see moose. I'm Canadian, I've never seen a moose. What kind of Canadian am I? And so the guide was always like, you know, Jaene, they're not as common as some people think. And I was like, I don't care, I want to see moose. And so for 5 days, no moose, but lots of animals and just beautiful water, waking up at 6 o'clock and, you know, seeing meteor shower at night, like absolutely wonderful nature stuff, like nothing about Toronto or work or dreary past, whatever, just in the moment, enjoying the moment. And as we're paddling out, 9-kilometer paddle to go to where we had to go to, paddling out, and I'm like, oh, I didn't get to see my moose, right? And then as we're paddling, we look back and there was this marshy area over here, and there was a mom moose and her twin calves. And I was like, oh my God. And I was freaking out. And I think at that moment, I kind of said, okay, whoever's out there or whatever's out there, you're giving me a hint. You're smiling at me, and I can tell you're out there. And that was the first epiphany. And then I lost hope again. So I just lost hope in between. And just when I just given up and said, you know, I'm going to die in this freaking trade for one reason or another, and I'm just never going to make it out, something would happen. And so like in 98 was the camping trip. 99, I went to a conference with Save the Children Canada, and it was all experiential young people from the trade talking about working in the field, not the trade, but doing nonprofit stuff, advocating the issues, strategic campaigning, networking with other people who were from the trade that were empowered and moved on, and seeing that there, you know, you don't stay a hooker for life, you know? There is a way out. There are better things in the world. So that, and then I continued to volunteer with Save the Children. So even though I was hopeless, I kind of figured something to do. So that was 99. 2000, I did my sculpture garden with Beat the Street.
How were you getting connected to all of these groups?
I always was part of the agencies. Like I was a client at Shout Clinic, SOS, Beat the Street.
So you were a client before you actually became part of the solution?
Oh yeah, totally. I was a client. Now that I'm on the other side, I wanted to do right by my brothers and sisters. I feel a commitment to that, and I feel a sense of duty that I'm articulate enough. I've had enough experiences and enough skills that I'm able to take advantage of these opportunities. Also, in terms of the sexual exploitation of children, I was thinking about the research component. I kind of thought about the structure, what we needed to advocate on in terms of kids in the sex trade. It's profiling Toronto-based agencies and their initiatives, which is important because a lot of people don't know what you guys do, for instance. They just assume you guys bust the kids and you throw them all in jail, but that's not the case, obviously. So
you are buddies with a lot of cops, the same guys that you probably were running from before.
Seeing cops as human beings, well, they're not all evil. Some of them are really great, committed guys, like the one I'm working with, Detective Strobel, right now. Great guy, really committed to the cause. So it's good, though, because it makes you see.
But how do you feel now? Because you are...
I've come full circle.
Well, I say you've come beyond full circle.
Somebody was smiling at me. I was so lucky that not only I made it alive, but so in one piece, and I solidified who I am through it. A lot of people become shattered from the trade. I love being able to give back. I do. I've always been a giving, generous person, and I love doing good.
Does your mother know you've been working as a prostitute?
No. She doesn't know at all. Not yet.
And she's not living in Canada right now?
No.
Are you worried that she might find out?
Not really. I think when the time is right, I'll have to tell her anyway. The reason I don't want her to know is because I don't want her to think it was her fault. And I don't want her to take that response. That's a hard burden for a mother to carry. And she's already had enough of her own burden. When the timing's right, I'll probably tell her. But
it's like you've always been the parent.
Yeah.
Even when you were a little kid and you were coming home and making your dinner, you was making sure everything was okay for those little parents of yours who couldn't handle anything.
I think that's why I resented her in my teen years, because I went out of my way to be good to her, and I felt like she didn't give me that basic protection.
So have you forgiven her? Because clearly you have.
Oh God, I never hated her to begin with. There is forgiving myself. Now that was one of the hardest things to have ever done.
What did you have to forgive yourself for?
Because I always hated myself. I always blamed myself for a lot of things. So
like what?
All kinds of things. My dad leaving, my mom having issues, me going crazy, me being a prostitute. It was all my bad karma because I'm evil. And so that's how I used to talk to myself, even worse than that.
How'd you stop that?
You have to change it. Every day you wake up, you have to make that commitment to not be that person and know why you don't want it, because you have to know. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm about. And I deserve a little bit better than this.
So for the people who are sitting at home and listening to you, and their life is sufficiently dysfunctional that they're actually thinking selling their body might be a cool thing to do, what would your advice be?
Well, it definitely isn't a cool thing to do. I'll say that up front. You know, for me, it was definitely a survival choice. I think you lose a lot of yourself that you may or may not regain. And you see, I mean, I don't know how many make it out. Not very many make it out. You know, that's why I'm saying I'm lucky. Those that choose to say prostitution is glamorous and exciting obviously haven't been there. There are a lot of jerks out there. And to constantly be physically and emotionally and sexually abused by these guys, all those little things that chip off your soul a little.
You have your own house for the first time.
Yeah, for sure. This is a great place. First stable housing on my own for 3 years. Like, I've never had that. I love having my own place. I love coming home at night. Even my work is very heavy duty. I have another gig that I'm doing that's not related to the issue, and then I volunteer. This is my sanctuary. This is when I come home. It's all at the door, even if it was a bad day. If I want to cry, I'll grab my cat, I'll bawl, move on. It's my home. It's my space. It's my control. Nobody can take that.
What would make you cry these days?
Oh, a lot of things. Hearing people's story. I still care. I have a big, big heart. And I think being in the trade make me act tough, but ultimately I am such a softie inside, and I care. Like, you know, when I went to Nicaragua and talking to the young people that lived in the park, charging 50 cents Canadian to $2 per date without condoms, and the amount of violence and just the historical context of their family backgrounds, I just wanted to take them all home and just say, you know, there's a better life in the world. You hang on to those memories because then you do your work, and your passion and your commitment comes from honoring those people.
Yeah.
But it was funny because in Nicaragua, they were sharing, and I was like going through a phase. I'm never coming out because people will not respect my work. They will not look at me as a professional if they know I'm experiential.
If they know I've been a prostitute.
Yeah, they'll always think of me as the hoe. And I don't want that. I want to be a professional. I'm a consultant. C2 is a great concept. It's my business. I want them to respect my work. So I went there. I didn't come out. These kids were telling me everything. I mean, when you have a 19-year-old saying, I've been on the streets for 12 years, you know, you think to yourself, that's wrong. But I decided, you're sharing with me, it's only fair. So I told them, yeah, I used to be on the streets and I worked in the trade. And one of the girls were like, in the streets? What do you mean in the streets in Canada? They're like, there's kids on the streets in Canada? I was like, yeah. They're like, there's prostitutes in Canada? They just couldn't grasp that. I just wish society wouldn't treat them so bad. It's so hard exiting because once you exit, you have to turn your back on that life and pretend it never happened because people are so judgmental, so judgmental. We're not throwaways. We're not good for nothings. Some of us get trapped, and a lot of us don't even realize it till it's too late, and then we just get perpetuated in this cycle. We just need a hand up. The last 3 years have been good to me, and hopefully, you know, the future will be better. There'll be ups and downs, but considering what I've been through, it can't be worse. You know, like, I got a head on that. It's like, okay, I can deal with certain things now. Just like, it's not a big deal, you know, like, I know what's important in life, and I really nurture my animals, my relationship with the Creator, and my relationships with my friends and family.
So there is a Creator, but not necessarily God.
It's not one thing. I use it as a term, like you could say it's an energy or karma. I don't know.
There's something out there.
There's just even nature to me is like the Creator. It's a unique relationship you have to develop with the world around you, and you have to take care. And you got to have some faith, right? But now I guess I'm privileged enough to know what faith means, whereas before faith was just a luxury and a privilege that I couldn't afford. And now, you know, not only can I afford it, I can hopefully give that back to other people, you know, inspire them to find their own path.